Okay, welcome. PRC Saltillo is honored to host this guest webinar, Our AAC Journey, Starting Early and Growing into Robust AAC Systems. Our presenters are Jill Tolman, Corinne DePersis, and Tara Boley. My name is Lisa Tim, and I will be your moderator tonight, along with Courtney Mayholtz. We welcome 3 presenters today. Jill is a speech-language pathologist specializing in supporting individuals who have complex communication needs and use AAC. She is the owner of a private practice, Jill Tolman and Associates in Colorado. Jill is not receiving a speaker fee for this presentation. Corinne is the parent of 7-year-old Madeline, who uses many modalities to communicate, including AAC. Originally from upstate New York, Corinne moved to Denver for graduate school and now calls Colorado home with her family. She holds a PhD in the field of immunology, but has shifted to stay-at-home parent, home health care provider for her daughter, and advocates for inclusivity in schools. Tara is parent to 8-year-old Evan, who also uses an AAC device. They have been on an aggressive therapy schedule since the age of 1, and Tara attributes his success to this. Tara is also an SLPA working with AAC at Jill Tolman and Associates. Corinne and Tara are receiving a speaker's fee from PRC Saltillo for this presentation. We appreciate our presenters sharing their journeys and expertise today. Thank you, Jill, Corinne, and Tara, and we thank our attendees for joining us today. Before I turn the controls over to our presenters, we would like to learn who you are. Please take a moment to let us know a little more about you with these 3 polls. First, what is your role on the AAC team? I'll launch this poll. And if you'll go ahead and give us an answer, that'll help us get to know who you are. So you should be able to answer on your screen. And I'm not seeing anyone be able to answer. So it appears. All right, if you would just go ahead and type in the chat window so we can see maybe who's here. It appears that it closed before I was able to launch it. So we didn't quite get that answer. And then Courtney, if you could maybe summarize a little bit about who's here so our presenters have an idea.
Yes, I'm seeing quite a few SLPs who have signed in, directors for different preschool programs. Getting a lot of comments about the poll disappearing. Let's see, now they're starting to come in. A lot of SLPs, OTs, let's see, a couple of AT specialists, parents are here as well. So nice, good mix. Preschool SLPs, good mix.
Okay, I'm going to try a poll again. It doesn't show closed, so let's see if technology will work with me. So the next poll is, and it's not launching. Try one more time. All right, there we go. Should be launching. You should be able to vote. So what age group do you work with? And it closed. I did not close it.
Closed again. Yeah, it popped up on my screen and it closed again.
Technology is great when it works.
So people are answering the chat window. They are saying some work with 3 to 18, K to 5, 3 to 22, middle school, pre-K, high school, all age groups. Seeing quite a bit of 3 to 12. middle school, preschool, kindergarten, birth to 13. Seems to be the most, is that 3 to middle school, high school.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and see. I'm going to try one more time just to see. So what we'd like to know is, are you supporting an individual who uses AAC? Yay! Okay. So we have quite a few. I'm going to go ahead and close this intentionally this time. And what our goal was to be able to share the results of the poll. And so it shows that the attendees are able to review the results. So you can see that many are therapists here, but we do have some parents, some educators, another supporting role, or there's about 6% that are not currently supporting someone using AAC. And with that, I'm going to go ahead now and turn the presentation over to our presenters. So Jill, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter. And we'll be here helping monitor the questions.
Thank you, Lisa and Courtney, and thank you to PRC Saltillo for inviting the three of us to speak tonight. I'm going to start us off with talking about AAC and early intervention. Next, we're going to turn it over to Corinne, who's going to talk about Maddie's AAC journey. Tara will speak next about Evan's AAC journey, and we'll save a few minutes at the end for discussion. Here are learning objectives, which we all have ahead of time. So for time's sake, I'm going to skip over them. There's a growing body of research about AAC and early intervention. So I just wanted to go over a few things with us today. In 2013, Buchelman and Miranda found that AAC services and supports are now considered by many, but still not all parents and professionals, as a first line of communication intervention services and supports. Romski and her colleagues in 2015 found that many families and professionals are or remain reluctant to explore AAC with this population. We certainly know from the research and from clinical practice and from families' experiences that AAC enhances children's communication and language development. We also know that the literature tells us to follow typical language development models when supporting children who will be developing language using augmentative means. And finally, and most importantly, we must include family members and communication partners in our interventions. So where do we start? We want to start with dynamic assessment and feature matching. Certainly with this population, we need to do ongoing assessments because we're starting with very young children who are growing and changing. The participation model, first introduced in 1988, so more than 30 years ago, by Buchelman and Miranda, has stated that the purpose of an AAC intervention is to facilitate meaningful communication and participation in daily life activities. Part of the participation model is to assess opportunity barriers, access barriers, and the effectiveness of our interventions. We plan and implement interventions for today, for tomorrow, and for the future. When working with young children, it's important to determine their understanding of symbolic representations. Do they understand objects, photos, and/or symbols? For our young children who have significant physical impairments, we can use auditory cues to encode language concepts. It's important with this population that we determine how the child will access AAC today and in the future. You'll hear from both Corinne and Tara that when their kids started using AAC, they weren't yet walking, nor were they able to isolate their fingers to be able to use direct selection to access AAC technology. However, we knew that this would quickly emerge. So when we're talking about accessing AAC technology, we can look at direct selection, using hands, using eyes. We can also look at using scanning. We want to start exploring voice output and AAC technology for children as they start finding it meaningful. In 2021, Lund and her colleagues said that the goal of assessment is not to fit the client to a particular device or communication strategy, but rather to identify the strategies that enhance the client's strengths to maximize their independent communication and ultimately their ability to exert control over their world. Two examples of assessment tools for young children that we use frequently are the Communication Matrix and the MacArthur-Bates Communicative Development Inventories. The Communication Matrix is an online tool. It comes in multiple languages. The MacArthur-Bates is a wonderful inventories for starting to document what young children understand, as well as early gestural development for those kids who are able to use gestures. This is an example of a matrix. You'll see that the boxes that are in orange are mastered, the boxes that are in yellow are emerging, the boxes that are in white are not yet used. The matrix is a great tool to help identify initial communication goals, and it's also wonderful to document progress over time. Gloria Soto and her colleagues at San Francisco State University have compiled some wonderful resources, some wonderful culturally responsive AAC resources. We've attached the link here, and we encourage you to familiarize yourself with it if you're not already. When we're talking about AAC intervention for young children, AAC intervention is truly language intervention. We want to build language opportunities into daily routines and highly preferred activities. And for those of us with young children and those of us working in early intervention, we know that this is what early intervention is all about. AAC intervention is not about the switch, the app, the device, the latest Instagram post. Intervention is about the child and his or her family. There's More to Life Than Cookies is a wonderful article by Light, Parsons, and Drager, where they really identify contexts to facilitate social closeness interactions with beginning communicators who are pre-symbolic. This is in your handout, so I'll only go over a few things that I think we all know, but it's important to remember when working with young children. We want to be chronologically age appropriate. Our intervention should occur within natural environments. They should have a clear repetitive structure. Number 7 is really, well, I'd say 7 and 9 are my two favorites, that we want to allow the beginning communicator to participate in multiple ways by using gross rather than discrete behaviors. And number 9, we really want to support, encourage, and educate families how to respond to their children's communication and to their subtle communication attempts. Here are some examples of beginning AAC. These examples actually come from Maddie. She and Evan and lots of young kids love songs. The pictures on the left are some of Maddie's favorite song choices, and these were some of the original pictures and symbols she used when starting with AAC. And then the pictures on the right are choices that she could make when selecting Wheels on the Bus, so she could start to direct and have some control over what was happening in her world. These two pictures show displays of early communication displays. The picture on the left is a play page where you'll see some core words and then some play choices. The picture on the right is a display specific to bubbles. So once the child was able to understand and use the symbols on the left, we can then expand to give him or her opportunities to not only make choices, but to direct while blowing bubbles. You'll note that symbols for more, want, go, bubbles, and stop are in the same locations on both of these displays. For kids who have significant physical disabilities and are going to be using eye gaze or scanning to access communication, these are 3 examples of some initial displays that were created for Brett when he started in preschool. His team thought it would be important not just for him to pick what center he wanted to go to, but when he was in that preschool center to be able to make choices and direct and comment while he was in that center. The words in blue on the far left of all of these displays were created so his teachers, therapists, and paraeducators would know what to say to him for him to select a category. He would use a switch or smile to indicate what he wanted, and then the adult working with him would then present choices under that category. So if we look at the puzzle and games picture in the far right, if he would select bubbles, we would then ask where he wanted to blow bubbles and start giving him choices: up, down, in, out, on, off. It certainly gives the adults a recipe to know and a routine to know what to do and how to give choices. And more importantly, it's starting to build consistency for Brett so he can know what to expect and how his language is being organized. Displays like these can easily be transferred and programmed onto AAC technology. When accessing AAC technology for young children who are developing finger isolation and who will be able to use their hands, there are tools and techniques we can use. The picture in the middle is an example of a touch guide that can be presented on a communication device. And on the picture on the right, that device has a Keyguard on it. And in this picture, the child is holding her mother's hand as her mother is activating the pig symbol. There are also access settings on devices and communication applications that we can tweak and optimize to help kids successfully access technology, such as release time and hold down time. You'll hear Corinne and Tara talk about these as well. For alternative access for kids who have significant physical disabilities who aren't going to be able to use their hands to access technology, switch toys are a great way to teach cause and effect and differentiated cause and effect. There are applications for tablets to teach switch skills while kids are playing. Scanning is built into some applications. For iDevices, we can create recipes so kids who rely on scanning can access them. There's auditory scanning and visual scanning on communication devices and communication applications for iDevices. Our practice really likes starting with the Go Talk Now communication application from Attainment Company for young kids who are going to start with using auditory scanning, as it has the most customizable features built into the app itself. These are 4 pictures of Gabriel, who is a really bright little boy who loves using his switches. Ryan is his best dinosaur friend. He uses one switch to turn Ryan on or off. In the top right picture, he is using another favorite application of ours called Counting Songs from Inclusive, actually in both top pictures, from Inclusive TLC that has scanning built into the application. And then you'll also see him using switches to access his communication device. So Maddie and Evan's AAC journey, we're going to hear about in a moment. For each of them, intervention started with using photos and symbols. AAC technology was introduced. Initial early communication goals focused on making object choices, making picture choices, building understanding of symbolic representations, and then helping them access vocabulary on AAC technology with intent. Some strategies used during preferred activities, daily routines, and play included aided language input, which you'll see me using with Maddie. This was a couple of years after she started on her AAC journey. We also used modeling and sabotaging, just to name a few. I'm now going to turn it over to Corinne, who's going to talk about Maddie and her journey.
So thanks so much for inviting me to participate today. There's nothing that I love more than bragging about my kids. So today, the fact that I get to do it in front of like almost 400 people, I think, is quite the honor. So thanks so much for having me. My name's Corinne, and I am Madeline's mom. There's some pictures here that we took of all of our adventures from this summer. And there's also a picture of Maddie's dad and my partner, Dom, and I'll be referring to him a few times during the talk. Instead of me introducing Madeline, I thought it would be more apropos to use her personal page to do it, so it's kind of in her own language. Madeline goes by Maddie or Madeline. She's 7 years old. She absolutely loves to talk about her birthday. Her younger sister's name is Delilah, who's 4. She really enjoys school, and currently she's in 1st grade. She has 2 dogs, and up until just recently, 2 cats. And her favorite book is Don't Eat Your Classmates. There's also a bunch of questions on here, and in case you ever have the opportunity to speak with Maddie, just be prepared that she will likely ask how old you are, so if that's something you're sensitive about, fair warning. She just finished a school project called the Me Bag, where she needed to pick 3 items that would fit in a lunch bag that would represent her as a person. At home, we prepared a page so that when she had to do her oral presentation, it was already available to her. And she said, I brought a ball, my sister book, and a music box. Right now, she is really interested in playing any game that involves a ball, especially if she gets to do it with her friends during recess. She's always been an avid reader, and the sister book that she picked was a book that my brother gave the girls that is customized with their names included. And I think she picked that book because it really represents how close her sister and she are. Music has been an essential staple for Maddie since the day she was born. I like to say that it helps her regulate, and here she says it helps me feel happy. Maddie has Parkinsons Syndrome, which is a ultra-rare genetic neurological disorder. Only about 1,000 people in the world have been diagnosed. And there's a wide range of severity of symptoms. Maddie presents somewhere in the middle. She has global developmental delays. She didn't walk independently until she was 5 years old. She still needs support with all of her activities of daily living. And just like most people with Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, she's largely non or pre-verbal. After a unremarkable pregnancy, Maddie and I experienced a bit of a traumatic birth. And even after 36 hours of labor, an emergency C-section, things just didn't quite come online as we were expecting. Even in the recovery room, she had several dusky spells where she stopped breathing and turned bluish gray, and that resulted in a couple days in the NICU. She also had a lot of feeding problems where she just had a difficult time latching, and she's overly sleepy where she was really difficult to wake up to eat, and then even when she was awake eating, it was so taxing for her that she often would fall asleep too early, so she didn't get all the calories she needed for that meal. We didn't have a diagnosis at this point. We didn't know how Madeline was interacting with her world or interpreting her world. Her reactions certainly weren't the same as other infants. So at this point, Dom and I really had no idea what her cognition level was, and we didn't know how to fix this. By the time she was 4 months, we insisted on a more thorough evaluation done by Child Find, and she was approved to receive early intervention services. So by the time she was 5 months old, she was receiving physical therapy, and Dom and I thought this was a great opportunity to try and catch her up. We often would ask our physical therapist, what can we do? What do we need to do? And her response was difficult. We were doing everything we could do, and the rest needed to come from Maddie. without self-motivation, she just wasn't going to start moving, which is what we were really working on. And luckily, by the time she was 8 months old, when she's supposed to be sitting independently, when she's supposed to be crawling around, she wasn't doing any of those things. And we were devastated about this self-motivation problem because it's not something we had any control over. We couldn't teach her that. We couldn't give it to her. She had to do it herself. And luckily, this green turtle that lights up and plays all the music and haunts every parent's nightmare for the rest of their life was something she really, really loved. And all of a sudden, she started army crawling towards it, and she really wanted it. And this was fabulous for us because now we knew she was absorbing what was around her, and she wanted something, and she was going to make it happen that she got it. After 17 months of pretty intense screenings and genetic testing, we finally got a diagnosis of Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. I thought that we were pretty prepared for any diagnosis, but the thing that really dropped me to the floor was when the genetics counselor told us that most people with Pitt-Hopkins syndrome have a moderate to severe intellectual disability with low likelihood of verbal speech. I was very scared. I would never have a conversation with my daughter. And even before we had this diagnosis, we had been working on alternative communication tools. And the one that I'm going to show you here is Maddie's approximation of the American Sign Language sign of more. I'm sure everyone is familiar with this. And this is really the first day, she's just 2 years old, that she effectively communicated with me, and I'm pretty sure anyone in the world who watched this video knows exactly what she's trying to say. And that meant she was going to be able to talk to people. And we just had to figure out how we were going to give her that voice.
Okay, we're going to pause it. Do you want more video? Do you want more video? More!
So she was able to communicate. She wanted to communicate. We just had to figure out how to give her that voice. And Dom and I are both early adopters to new technology. And we obviously knew who Stephen Hawking was. And we'd seen other people using tablets to communicate. So we just figured we would get her an iPad, and that would solve everything. We spoke to our SLP who was given to us by Early Intervention, and his response was really disheartening. His experience was that families who had communication devices more often used them as doorstops than really the tools they were supposed to be. And since that was so disappointing, we decided to explore what our private insurance could help us with. So we went to Children's Hospital, and she was assessed there. There was just a lot of roadblocks with Children's, especially the long wait list. So we still wanted to look for other places, especially an SLP group that encouraged early adoption of AAC. And that is what led us to Jill Tolman and all of her associates. So we started working with Jill, and we just figured we'd get that tablet and we'd be on our way. And what really happened is we found out quickly that this journey to functional language is much longer and slower than we ever imagined. So at 2.5 years old, she was using a light tech binder that I actually have here. So within the binder, there's lots of pages of laminated cards with all customized vocabulary that is associated with our daily routines. And then we can pick a few cards, like these 3, and then she can have a choice between anything like 2. I think we went up to 6 choices at the time. So this was easy for us to implement on a daily basis. But after only 6 months of using that, Maddie received her first speech generating device, which was a NovaChat. She started with 20 positions, and again, the vocabulary file was highly customized. It actually really mimicked what we had in the binder. So by the time she was 5, she was up to 60 positions, which she's on now, and actually she just got her second device in the spring. So after only a month of using her talker, we were really encouraged by how much she could use it, especially in directing the types of play that we were doing with her. So I'm going to play a video of she and I playing with the tambourine, and show you that now.
Down, down. You want to do down? Down, down, down. Down. Now what do you want? Now what do you want? Out. Go. Go. Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. Go. Let's go. Uh-oh.
So now I navigate to her person page so she can pick some alternatives.
Delilah's turn.
And Delilah is at the time her 1-month-old baby sister. And you can just tell how she thinks that's absolutely hysterical that Delilah gets a turn. Maddie has a lot of challenges that interfere with her ability to easily access her device and language. First, I want to talk about her physical challenges resulting from her gross motor delays. So in order to be able to constantly communicate, someone who uses a device needs constant access to that device. But Maddie wasn't exactly walking, so she definitely couldn't carry around her own device. And even now that she is walking, it's still a challenge for her. So we came up with using a strap that you wear across your body like a messenger bag. And instead of having it in the backpack or diaper bag, it's always available to easily give her access to really talk whenever she wants to. So this is a picture of her at a birthday party this summer. And you can see that the Disney Princess Belle is there, and she asked the kids, "What is your favorite book?" Now this is great because we all know that Maddie has a very easy answer to that on a very accessible page. So I immediately took her talker out from the side of me, put it in front of her, and she was able to answer the question along with all the other kids. Before Maddie was talking, she was using a gait trainer. And we worked with Readapt to design and build a custom mount for her talker to be clamped right onto the actual gait trainer. This allowed her to completely independently have access to her words anytime she was walking around. She's a really social person, so often she would just walk up to a bunch of people. She had her words there and they could have a conversation. And I just think that's a really rich example of what having a device like this can offer you. So this is a video of Maddie at a Halloween party at her school. She's going along dressed as a rainbow.
I'm a pig?
So without me, she's just cruising around, and a little girl just feels comfortable going right up to her and starting a conversation. So beyond the physical challenges, Maddie also has some fine motor challenges. She has a difficult time isolating her finger. She's a sensory seeker, so she likes to rake on the device. And she has some limited strength, which inhibits her ability to have very good accuracy and reach the top row of her talker. So a tool that we've been using is a Keyguard, which has helped with all of this. She actually uses it as a scaffold to climb up to get to the top level. It also allows her to rest her hand on essentially the screen without activating all the buttons underneath her hand, and that gives her the ability to stabilize to have more accurate activation. It also makes a tapping sound when you kind of hit it on the screen, and Dom and I use this often to redirect her attention to engage with her talker. So this video is of Maddie on the first day that she received her new device, and I asked her, how do you feel about your new device?
Can you tell me how you feel about your new talker?
Seems overall positive.
Touch it.
Hey,
So obviously she's not answering. Dom taps it, bring her attention down.
You feel funny?
So
It
good.
feels so good to have a new talker.
So she, once her attention was down there, she was able to
Can you tell-
answer the question. Another tool that we use is a 0.2 second delay, which results in necessitating a long press on to activate her words. This helps her increase intentionality and reduces the amount of non-specific button activation. Since she does have a hard time hitting the right button, having that accuracy, she sometimes will use the device to kind of rest on while she's really zoning in on the actual words she's intending to say. And it's only until she pushes that word and holds it down for long enough that it ends up speaking for her. So this is a video of Maddie during a telehealth session with Jill during the pandemic, and they're talking about the letter K, and Jill asks her to say kangaroo.
Should we get the kangaroo? Do you see it here? You can push it. Very good.
So it took her about 4 times before she, 4 hits before she actually got to the word kangaroo, but you don't hear anything else except for kangaroo because that's where she landed on. So there's some other external challenges that we've run into, including some resistance from school SLPs and other school professionals. I think what's going on is when you are, and you all are probably much better at describing this than I am, since most of you are in this position, but when you're a school provider, you're going to be providing assistance to kids with something like addiction challenge or a speech delay. And then all the way on the other side of the spectrum, you have kids like Maddie who are nonverbal and are working with devices. That's a lot to specialize in, and I think the majority of school SLPs are focusing on the kids that they're going to see more often, since kids like Maddie are pretty rare. So then when we get, sometimes when we interact with them, they are unfamiliar with the technology and almost seem intimidated by it. We try to do team training with our school team, but it's really hard to schedule a bunch of teachers and therapists together to do multiple hours of training so that they really get that full buy-in, especially during the pandemic. What we've observed sometimes is people tell Maddie what to say, and I am guilty of this as well. So for instance, when you're walking down the hallway with her at school and she sees someone, sometimes people will say, Maddie, say hi, say hi. And if you tell Madeline what to do, she likely will not do it. And instead, I like to encourage using open-ended questions. So saying, Maddie, do you have anything you'd like to say? Sometimes her answer might be out of left field, like, my cat Lennox died and he was 19 years old. And while that is totally not expected, I would argue that that's pretty age appropriate. It's also age appropriate if she just ignores whoever's asking a question. I know a lot of parents of 7-year-olds that have that issue. And then sometimes on the other end, we have people who are really excited about the device, and it's coming from a place of love and good, and instead what happens, there's too much pressure to use the device. It's really hard for Madeline to be in school, learning new material, coming up with answers to questions, organizing her body to be able to respond, find the answer among 60 other words, and then continue to do that for 7 hours. So I think that it's important that we have more of a balance between just using the device and maybe some of the other tools that she uses to communicate. When Maddie gets frustrated or bored, she kind of shuts down, and it's often because whatever's happening is not fun. We also run into people who just refuse to engage with the device for whatever reason. Madeline is a total communicator, so there's lots of other options that she can use. So as long as the other person is willing to communicate with her in a different way, that's okay too. Another challenge is how huge of an undertaking this is for the parents and the whole family. There needs to be constant integration throughout the whole day. We have to bring the device with us everywhere. We're nonstop modeling. We're providing opportunities for her to use it. And then when she doesn't use it, which happens a lot, we have to not get frustrated and just be okay that modeling is the best we got at that point. There's also a lot of file modification and customization that we do specifically, and that is very time consuming. But we've found it to be very helpful for Maddie to do that. This is a very slow process. Maddie, like I said, is a total communicator, and right now that she's independently mobile, if you ask her if she wants to play with a ball or go swing on her talker, she's likely not going to answer. Instead, she's just going to walk to whatever she wants to do. She's also very expressive, so there's a lot of ways to understand her rather than just using the talker. But it's easy as her parent and someone who works with her on a regular basis to become frustrated and deflated and unmotivated. So we've come up with quite a few strategies that we think have ended up with some success. And when we do see those genuine and spontaneous communication examples, it fills my bucket that needs to be filled. So this is a video of the girls eating lunch together, and Delilah decides to paint Madeline with oatmeal. And I think Madeline's response, and I didn't ask for her to say anything, I just think that it is perfect.
You want that? Oh, don't put it on her arm. Try again. Uh-oh, it's on your arm. Uh-oh, you want a napkin?
So she very clearly was not happy with that. And I think that her response of uh-oh is just perfect. So one of the strategies that we employ a lot is integrating AAC into our daily life. And a routine that we have had since basically Madeline was born is their bedtime routine. It involves singing songs, selecting verses and phrases, and actually making some of the sounds of the songs. It involves reading books and talking about the mechanics of book reading. They pick a number and we count to that number, and that's how many deep breaths they take. And also she gets to say goodnight to people that she loves. So we're going to skip this video because it's very long, but if there's time at the end, I'd love to share that with someone. Another great place to integrate AAC for us is at the dining table. To us, mealtime is family time, and we gather there 2 to 5 times a day. When we're there, there's less distractions and we're able to have better focus. And Madeline is sitting in a supported seat, so she doesn't have to worry about keeping her body up. All she has to do is control her hands. And I know that mixing a high-tech device with a little girl who's working on self-feeding yogurt sounds like a terrible idea, but a nice tip is that the Keyguard is dishwasher safe, and that is what usually takes the brunt of the mess, and then you can just wipe the screen off without much problem. So in the first video I showed you with the tambourines, you saw Madeline using language specific to games and how to direct those games. But I want to mention specifically that we also include comments. So not only is she saying blow bubbles, go up more, but she can also say yucky when she gets it in her mouth. And that just cracks me up. And I think it's another great example of authentic communication. Customize, edit, add. Like I mentioned, this is a big time commitment. We started with a word power 60 basic file on her new talker, but it's really a living file. It adapts, grows, changes basically daily. We make sure that, we try to make sure that there's age appropriate vocabulary, include what her friends are saying from school. We organize the vocabulary so that when she's at school, especially talking about some subjects, she doesn't have to work very hard to find the appropriate vocabulary. There's less navigation required. And we also really make sure that we work with our school team to make sure that we're up to date on school curriculum related vocabulary. Madeline's been working on spelling her name for quite a few years, but up until now she's used low-tech tools. And last night was her first time using this page that Jill and I developed, where she can actually start spelling her name using the letter locations on her tablet, which are the same locations as a whole QWERTY keyboard. But by only having one letter available at a time, she gets to be familiar finding where those letters are. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to add more letters so she can spell more vigorously.
Yeah, I can spell my name.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, how do you spell it? That's right, that's the first letter. Okay, now how else do you spell it? What's the next letter? You're really close, try again. Here, try again.
A.
That's right. Okay, what's the third letter?
C.
Absolutely. Next letter.
C.
Yeah. Okay, next letter.
You can't work, Mom.
What's the next letter, Maddie?
I.
Yeah.
E. Maddie.
Woohoo!
What's that? It was 19.
Okay. Yeah.
I could.
So I just love that, and I especially love how proud she is of herself, and I look forward to using this technique for more spelling and early literacy skills. We talked about constant access being so important, and I want to point out that Maddie has a fabulous school, a one-on-one paraprofessional that works with her at school. They've been with us for, this is our third school year together, and they're just so great at always being right there with Maddie's talker, available to Maddie at any time to say whatever she wants, and we're really lucky to have them. Normalization from peers, I think is huge. I think it helps her learn faster. We're big proponents of classes being inclusive. So Madeline's gone to general education classrooms with peers that are developing typically the whole time that she's been in school. We also like to send classmate families a letter that introduces Maddie and encourages them to foster relationships with her. Slow down is a great strategy, and I need to remind myself of that a lot. It just takes her longer to process and motor plan to get to where she needs to go. And I know most of us like to fill those awkward silences, but instead, those actually invite Madeline to participate because she's just about to get going and then you cut her off. So always counting to 10 or even more is really helpful. Presumed competence. A lot of people can say a lot of things about this, and all I'm going to say is give her the benefit of the doubt. Honor all expression. This is a great strategy because sometimes she'll say something without looking, it doesn't seem applicable to the conversation, or maybe it was an accident. But we like to honor anything that she says because it gives her a reaction, and that sets up this cause and effect relationship, and that ends up encouraging more use of her device. So when she is not feeling like participating, like she didn't with this school project, and she just started tapping the talker, not engaging for real, and we could have responded with frustration, like, come on. But instead, we acted like she was just giving silly answers. And by keeping it fun, it meant that eventually she came around and she was able to participate enough and answer the question for the school project. Lastly, I want to remind you to keep it genuine and authentic, not to tell her what to say, but really leave it up to her what she wants to tell you, and especially be adaptable and flexible. If she starts not being interested anymore, it's not going to be a benefit if you dig in your heels. It's going to result in much better outcomes if you can change up the activity or the subject that you're talking about. Because as Jill likes to say, if you're not having fun, she's not having fun. And then if she's not having fun, the session's over. So I want to remind you that she's a kid, and it's really not about her device. It's about her being able to communicate with her community. So on that, I'm going to go back to Maddie's goodbye page, where she has lots of fun options on how to say goodbye. But if you're a really special person and lucky, she will tell you, I love you. So thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Tara Boley, and to introduce my family here, first my husband Dan, then there's myself, Evan, who is 8, my daughter Paige, who is 12, and then our dog Cupcake. So today I'll be talking about who Evan is, a general timeline of our experiences, as well as device progression, our modes of communication, initial beliefs, fears, and thoughts, how we implemented AAC in our daily lives, strategies, barriers, his communication today, and things that we have learned along the way. So Evan is an adorable 8-year-old boy, as I mentioned. He joined an adaptive baseball league this past summer, and often you would find him in the outfield reading Pete the Cat or having someone else read the Pete the Cat with him. We live in Colorado and have been able to enjoy adaptive skiing. And so this is him with my husband, Dan, on one of the lifts. And then you can often see him at a playground swinging. Evan loves water. He is probably one of the cleanest boys ever because he is constantly wanting to be in a bath or a pool or something. He does hippotherapy, similar to Maddie. He loves music. I mean, if just literally every single person could just sing to him all day long, and he could live in a musical, he would be very happy. We use it in therapies, and it is super motivating. Another picture here is is Evan and his sister Paige, who he seeks out at every moment, and she is a good sport of reading a book over and over and whatnot. So that is the two of them together. So a timeline, pregnancy and birth had absolutely no problems, and really in general he met kind of all milestones up until about 6 months. So we had no idea that anything was kind of wrong. At our 8 months checkup, that was really where things kind of went awry and changed everything. I had never heard of early intervention prior to this, and when I left this appointment, I quickly called New Jersey's early intervention team and said, can I get a couple quick therapy appointments in before we move, but they quickly told me that I had no idea what I was doing and that I would have to wait till we moved to Colorado at 10 months of age. So at a year, he started early intervention. We did physical, speech, and occupational therapy. A lot of gross motor skills, light tech, pictures, ASL, feeding, sensory, fine motor skills. It definitely felt overwhelming, the amount of delays that he had and that we felt like we needed to overcome. However, even though there were a lot of delays that needed to be overcome, my husband and I had this thought that, we'd probably just therapy our way out of all these delays until we got his diagnosis at 18 months, which told us that nope, this is going to be long-term. He has disorder called congenital bilateral parasylvian polymicrogyria, or PMG. In layman's terms, that means at birth on both sides of his brain, he has too many small folds, and the area we speak with is pretty much grayed out. He has seizures, he's nonverbal, low tone, and mild facial paralysis. At 2 years and 8 months, he started weekly AAC therapy, and at 4 years and 6 months, he received his first device, and that was the NovaChat 10. And as you can see here, it was about 2 years after we started AAC where he got a device. And really that was because he was not ready. But when we did, it was really exciting to see how he flourished. So device progression, started with 2 buttons on a custom 15 location, then we went to 8 buttons. As you can see, Keyguard was also extremely helpful in helping his accuracy and for him to not rest his hand on the key or on the device itself. So it would just, spout out a bunch of words without, any purpose. He moved to a 42 modified word power, a lot of hidden buttons, custom vocabulary as well with the Keyguard. And currently he's on a word power 60 basic. And custom vocabulary, you'll hear that over and over. It has to be custom to him with a Keyguard. And the exciting thing is he independently navigates between pages and he generates about 3 to 7 words at a time. So a quote that I love by another PMG parent is from Natalie Roberts-Maceo, and she says, "Presuming that a nonverbal child has nothing to say is like presuming an adult without a car has nowhere to go." Evan has a lot of modes of communication. He gestures, facial expressions, vocalizations, body language, sign language. It's a lot less sign language now than it was early days. We even had an interpreter come to the house and teach our family sign language. However, he really doesn't use it as much now. Light tech, photos, PECs, picture exchange communication systems, and then his now NovaChat, which is his primary way of communicating. So initial beliefs, fears, and thoughts. I'm gonna first say that all of these fears are definitely based off my own self-preservation, that I really would not allow myself to believe or hope that we would ever be in the place that we are. We were told Evan would never talk, walk, or feed himself. And so I always just really had that in the back of my mind to sort of put myself in check when I would believe, because I just didn't want to be devastated. And if it didn't happen, that never stopped us from keep trying. And but if it didn't work, that was okay too. So, fears, is this really going to work? He had poor fine motor skills. He did a lot of that raking like Maddie did. He'd use 2 to 3 fingers to push a button. Worried about charging, worried about braking. That is a photo of one of 3 actual devices that he nicely broke, which insurance loves us. And then even losing the device. It took a long time for us to get one and approved by insurance. So that was another fear. Something that turned around for me are that symbols are universal. When you see that little stick guy bringing a fork with, I think it's lettuce to his mouth, it doesn't matter what language you speak, you can pretty much tell that that means something about food or that someone wants to eat. And that was something I really loved, that it was pretty universal. So if you have not read this book, I would recommend it. It is actually another PMG parent. This book from Robert Rummel Hudson, Skylar's Monster. The book, they refer to her brain disorder, polymicrogyria, which is same as Evan, as a monster. And really this book is about their journey and how they battle this monster that has taken over Skylar's brain and body and has prevented her from speaking. And a quote that has resonated with me from the second I read it to even today, I would love to read to you. It says, "We learn to be on our own, navigating a new world of Skylar's disability, and with little information and no roadmap. We learned that for parents like us, in the situation we were in, all you can do sometimes is trust in your fool's hope and keep going. You never give up and you persevere, not because you're plucky or heroic or even smart, but rather because you hate the thought that there might have been some answer or solution waiting around the corner. And you would miss it if you gave up too early. It's hope and it's stubborn and sometimes it's even stupid, but it's the thing you've got. So you run with it you go into battle against the monster with a rubber sword, because really, what else are you going to do? So early days implementing AAC, worked on a lot of fine motor skills, picture exchange communication systems, ASL, as well as joint attention. In this first video here, it's going to be with his OT. He is about 2.5 years old in his Elvis costume, and they're working on finger isolation, and you'll see that her hand is under his to help with access as well as accuracy.
Is your finger ready? Yeah. Oh. Here we go. It's the. Is your finger ready?
So in this other video here, it's with his speech therapist, also in early intervention, and she is using some pictures here and symbols to have Evan request that he wants to be in the swing, or he wants more of the swing.
I want. Eyes here. Swing. Good job. Good job.
Implementing, again, beginning days. This is actually at Jill Tolman's. He's probably about 3.5, 4 years old at this point. And I don't know if you can see from that photo, but hopefully you will in the video. There is a go and a stop. They're also working on finger isolation. She has light text symbols on the table as well. So multiple modes of communication. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, he also did the sign for go.
Go. Here you go. No, you told it to go.
So modeling here, this is at a kitchen table. He has a 42 modified word power at this point. There's also some laminated file pages for home and school. We used laminated pages because this was sort of my way that I was meeting school halfway, because they really struggled to implement the device. And I really wanted to, I just wanted them to have something, and they felt that these pages were easier to use. So this is me modeling, eating breakfast, and and having him state what he is eating, and then also acknowledging when he hit something different.
Okay. You press eat. Eat.
Apple sauce. Yeah.
Can you tell me? Let's clear that out for a second. Should we eat breakfast? What are you having? You're having Cheerios and a smoothie. You're right.
Haley.
So, we've talked about having fun. Implementing AAC, you have to have fun. It is slow progression. And so this is something that Evan loved doing, especially early days, playing with all the animal sounds, very age appropriate, and just exploring his device.
Butterfly. Like sheep, quack, quack, yabble, yabble. Grasshopper, butterfly. Diplodocus. Triceratops. Butterfly.
So pictures here, I see pictures everywhere. My husband travels for a living, and I think after a while he started to get scared to go on trips because a new part of our house would get laminated. But my reasoning for this was he really struggled to have his device with him, and I wanted to make sure that no matter where he was able to share what he wanted or say something. We did a lot of picture schedules as well to just give that association to different pictures. So here, go outside. He would either point to it or even bring it to us. And then there's those other icons there as well. Here is a kind of beginning sentence example I want to play in the basement. There's a Saltillo guide there. He struggled to walk up and down stairs safely, and so many times if he wanted to go upstairs, he would bring us this this picture of upstairs. Sorry, my mouse is freezing on me. Okay. So implementing AAC, during COVID, we had the opportunity to be a part of this literacy study with Penn State University, 2 SLPs that really are amazing. Jessica, Karen, as well as Selena Babb, really helped us with the accessible literacy learning app, or all app, that focused on decoding, sound blending, phoneme segmentation, sight words, and shared reading. In this picture, my daughter is working with Evan on the shared reading portion. And in general, I think if you can ever have siblings participate in therapies, or, give them a little job, they love being teachers and being a part of the process, I think it's just a win-win for all parties. This is her.
Cat, listening ears. Would you like to have a pet cat? Dig, cat, song, bog. Where is cat? Good job! Yay! Cat.
So strategies that I believed helped Evan, access. You can't grow or improve without it. Modeling through the device, and really modeling through the device, I think that's educating others to model as well. Repetition, you're going to do a lot of the same things, and it's a lot of repetition, let's just say. And, an aggressive therapy schedule. And this is not even, I don't even think this was even that it was helpful for him, but it definitely was helpful for my husband and I, because it kind of kept us on track. We don't have backgrounds in this. I do now, but I didn't at the time. And, fashion marketing doesn't set you up for success to have a child with communication complexities. So this was crucial for us. And then family buy-in. So barriers we faced with AAC, finding people, caregivers and school providers that believed in him. I don't think you ever have to, shame anyone, but just, empowering people with knowledge and telling them, with the access and just that if you don't help them, they can't improve. Also, other barriers, I've talked about his reduced fine motor skills, feeling overwhelmed as a parent. Overnight, I kind of felt like I had to be not only his parent, but a physical therapist, a speech therapist, an occupational therapist. And that's not an easy feat when, and one that just seemed, so large that how are we ever going to be successful? And lastly, really ensuring that his device was always near him. Other barriers we continue to face with AAC, going back to that, finding caregivers and school providers that will support and challenge him. He's become so strong and competent with his device that I really feel, sadly, that school and some others are really having to play catch up with him, which is a shame. And a quote that I love is that if you don't try, your chance of success drops to 0%. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just have to try, and something magical could occur. Evan's communication today. His device is an appendage. He takes it everywhere. He thinks about it, and previous times where I was definitely the one that carried it everywhere. He makes choices. He indicates preferences, requests, directs, and comments. Tying into this one, something that he loves to do for requests is that he'll say, I want iPad, please. But with Evan, he always makes sure that if he really wants it, he puts the word yes at the end of it, because if you say yes, you have to give it to him. However, it gets, a bit dicey when, when I then press no, and he'll look at me with a stare. that I said, yes, you have to give this to me. Other things we're working on, verb phrases, noun plus verb, verb and preposition, shared reading, which definitely was catapulted from our time with the All app, and simple sentences, articles, pronouns, nouns, decoding. He's working on sound blending and sight words, which are all super exciting. Another video here, this is with a great therapist here at Jill Tomans. It's a favorite, highly preferred video, and it's paused at this moment, and they're just talking about it. And so he is just telling her something about his favorite song.
Good job. Can we put it all together? I see a green.
You can see you always have to cheer too. That's something that's very important with Evan as well. So another thing with Evan that he loves to do, he loves to tell and share with others his favorite things. And you'll notice it's kind of similar to therapy. And so my husband actually sent a similar video to Jill and said, I think Evan's telling us we're done. We don't need to do any more therapy. I get what we're doing. But you'll also see here when he's motivated, he's using it, he's engaged with it, and motivation is key. Finding that thing that makes the individual want to participate. Even if it might not be something you exactly want to participate, but it's something that they want. So this is that video. Okay. Like I said, my mouse is.
What do you want to tell me?
3.
It is the number 3. What comes after 3?
4.
Good job.
6.
I do see 6. I'm going to keep going.
7.
7's after 6.
8.
And then 8.
9.
Great job, Ev.
And then there's that cheering again. So things that we have learned along the way, number one, don't give up. This is a journey, and everyone's learning a new language. Something I would tell therapists, I know there's quite a few on here, is that, check in with your families. What are their barriers? What supports do they need? Can you help them find some of these individual and environmental supports that would make this journey a little bit easier and kind of help them persevere during those really difficult early days where, not only your son wants to chuck the device, but you may as well. So, trust in the process. Find 5 minutes here and there. It makes it a lot less overwhelming. And, we started a little bit slower, and just, object choices and pictures. And I think what helped us was that I laminated the entire house. So we had pictures everywhere. So it was easier to, pick these little moments that were very organic to communicate. But number one, Dan and I, our first job is to be Evan's parents. We're going to have good sessions and bad sessions. Something I would say to a parent is that I would get really discouraged. Something now that I look at bad session as, how do we turn this into an opportunity? And to just try not to focus on those ones because we all have good and bad days. And my most important thing that if nothing else comes from this, or at least my portion of this talk, is that communication is about connection, The device is a tool to connect and access his world. And I just think that's very, very critical. Individualized vocabulary. He has an Alexa page. You've seen him cheer for himself. He actually has a cheer for me button too. And if you haven't cheered enough, he will make sure to press it. Tailoring, customizing, the device to fit him and how he uses it. There's not just one way. And I think also just seeking out therapists that believe in the same, philosophies as you do and that are just a good fit for your family. Breaks are okay. My husband travels, so we would take a month here and there prior to COVID and live in a different state of a part of my husband's territory. And I remember the first time I kind of freaked out after planning it and called Jill and said, okay, so do you have a really good speech therapist? And it was probably good that we weren't face to face because she was probably just shaking her head like, what is this girl doing? What she didn't realize is that I almost needed that permission to know that I wasn't going to hurt him if we took a break, and that it was almost as good for me as it was for him. And he just, and it wasn't that we stopped doing AAC, but I was worried about that consistency and somehow hurting him, and that permission was really, really important. Also okay to cancel. We would be in snowstorms and I was like, we've got to make it. It's okay to cancel. Also just finding what's motivating. You saw Evan therapying himself because it was a video he loved. And, number one, also another number one outside of communication is about connection. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think mistakes, it shows individuals that it takes time for us to process, as well as to find things, and that we make mistakes. In communication, things aren't always perfect. One thing too that I think can be helpful is helping individuals, especially in the school setting that we did, was creating pathways to make them feel comfortable about modeling and just to empower and educate them. And lastly, really just, have fun, because it's a journey. And if you're not having fun, why are we in this? And lastly, I want to end with a way that Evan loves to say goodbye, and then just personally thank you for this opportunity. Something that has putting this together was very therapeutic. I think often I forget where we came, how far we have come, and that could also be potentially a beneficial thing for therapists to hear too, that when you have, if you're able to get a snapshot of a family on one of their first visits, and 3 months down the road, you can tell the family's like, oh gosh, and feeling really deflated, if you're able to show them that and show some progression, or if another family is willing to, give some testimony, I think that is very helpful to just kind of help them continue on. So lastly, I'm ending it with Evan, and here you go.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. And here is Jill.
So I'm so proud of Tara and Corinne for sharing their stories, and their journeys continue. I just wanted to end really quick before we open it up for questions. David Buchelman, who is just a guru and a mensch of a man and has wonderful things to say, says this, and I just want everyone to really hear this, that I believe that to some extent the public has been deceived by believing the illusion that AAC technology itself causes someone to talk who cannot speak. I'm going to zip through this. While there's no magic wand, I think we would all agree, right, that authentic communication is magical. So I'm going to have Tara and Corinne come close, and we'd like to open it up for discussion. You sit right here. I'm going to scoot out of the way.
Okay, So I'm gonna go through some of these questions. You have lots of comments thanking you for sharing the stories and your amazing journeys, and you have really inspired a lot of people. There's a few people that are just getting their device very soon and are inspired by everything that you've had to say, making them feel really good about what they're doing. I'm gonna see if I can go up to some of these questions. Somebody wanted to know what kind of chair Maddie had. That was one of them that I remember.
So when she was really little, she had a high chair from IKEA. It was like that $20 chair, and it has that inflatable seat that soaks up the extra room, and that was perfect. And then when she got too big for that, we got it's just a regular high chair. It wasn't a special high chair that we got from OT or anything. It's an OXO Sprout. It has like the wood bottom and then like the white seat, and you can change it. We started with a pummel, and there's 5-point harness, and there was a tray, and then eventually we just started taking things away. And even now, she can sit in regular chairs at restaurants and at school. But I really think having just a little more support at the dining table results in a lot more talking, and it's hilarious just to hear what all the things she's going to say.
There were a few folks that have asked, how did you get team buy-in? So what were some strategies that you guys were able to use to get some of that team buy-in?
One thing that we did, if you saw that video of me modeling, we laminated all of his pages, and because his team really struggled to, they felt like he was kind of stimming on it, or he was just all over the place. And so we did that, as well as I created pathways for different areas. So when he's in circle time, you know, or weather or whatever, or math, they would have specific questions that could, you know, they could ask him and he could participate. Hopefully they're not just using those, but it's, you know, kind of initially to help them learn the device. And then I also, early days, I adapted pretty much every book, and which I don't recommend parents doing because it really is a full-time job. But I did that for a period of time too. But I felt like at some point it became a crutch. But it did help him be able to participate more.
For us, we try to really push communication between us, Dom and I, and our team. We get daily notes back about good things that happened, bad things that happened, and you know, and then we get to write back recommendations or questions or ideas. We also try to bring in as much training as our school professionals will allow. And Jill's been wonderful at coming to our school. We've also had Saltillo do some online training during the pandemic. And I think that just getting extra familiarity with Madeline's device specifically, and also some formal training, really helps people feel more comfortable and more willing to engage.
Another question, what are your expectations at home for how and when your child uses their talker? And then another part of it, kind of an extension, I think, how often would you say your children engage in their communication devices on their own, or even by you to spark any type of communication?
I mean, for Evan, it, you know, when I said it's an appendage, that is primarily how he communicates now. That wasn't the case at first, but, you know, I think early days, it's just modeling. You know, I would say a sentence, and then I would model how he would communicate the same. You know, just to put that language in, be able to, you know, share and tell him that, like, how he could say that language. But now, I mean, he just uses it. He uses it all the time, and we talk back through it as well. And my daughter does the same.
We use it during very specific times. So like the bedtime routine is every day. Having it at the dining room, every single day, multiple times a day. And then whenever we go out, it's always with us and available to her. Now, whether or not she's going to use it and engage with it and accept it is really not up to me. All we can do is offer it and encourage her, but she's the boss of what she's going to say and do. So some days are amazing, and some days we get like 6 videos that are just blowing our mind. And like yesterday when she was spelling out her name after seeing that the first time, that's great, but I would not say that that is our everyday experience. All we can do is just offer her opportunities.
Someone did ask about how you programmed that page for Maddie to be able to spell her name.
Actually, Jill did it for me, but we had talked about it. And she used to have the button that says Maddie, and it used to say, I can spell my name, M-A-D-D-I-E. And, that was cute and an easy shortcut for her. And then our school team is actually really encouraging Maddie to use her talker more at school, which is wonderful. But for her to actually type on a regular keyboard is a big challenge. So to break it down, we wanted to have one letter at a time, and to do that, we just had, once you activate one letter, it visits another page, and then that letter visits another page until you get all the way through her name, and then after you say E, it says her whole name at once. But so it's just a lot of navigation.
There were a couple questions on how you both ended up on the devices that you ended up on. So
it might be more of a Joe question, but
let's take it.
Yeah. I mean, Joe, you could probably speak to this one a little bit better.
Here, I'll just come behind
Okay.
So I think as Maddie and Evan's communication journey began, and they were traveling down the road, it became apparent that they both needed robust vocabulary files that had rich language and that would easily, or best support generative language. So that's how they ended up on those devices. Word power and all the work that Nancy Inman has done for years, it's just amazing. They both ended up on NovaChats because both families are more, well, you're not Android based. Mm-hmm. Well, I think when Evan got his device, the NovaChat was the only SGD, the only speech generating device that was offered. And with Maddie, Corinne and Dom are Android based, so.
Well, at the time,
the first device, right,
give you loaners when it broke, where the iPad, the touch chat, wouldn't give you a loaner when it was broken.
There wasn't a device.
And we assumed, like what happened with Tara and Evan,
3 times,
that it was just going to be shattered all the time. And in Maddie's defense, I don't think she's shattered anything once.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, and I mean, we're obviously speaking as independent people, right? Think something else that PRC Saltillo does that not many of the other communication device manufacturers do is they provide loaner devices when devices have to go in for repair, and that's huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like it's a convenience item. And I think too, their online trainings, their consultants who are available to provide trainings free of charge and to provide really high quality trainings are huge, because I think what we like to do is have, our Saltillo consultants come in and train teams on the device. And then together we go in and train teams on how the individual kiddo uses the device. Mm-hmm.
And I was skeptical when Jill recommended the NovaChat. A lot of kids with Maddie's same diagnosis end up with eye gaze devices, and I was kind of pushing that for a while. And Jill mentioned that those devices tend to be really heavy at the time. I think things are changing now. And she was not going to be a kid that was going to stay stationary. So we needed something that was able to be mobile. And while Maddie does have a hard time controlling her hands and fingers and arms, she does use her hands in a functional way, and she's come a long way with all of the skills that have been necessary for her to be able to activate this device. So in the end, I think it's a great decision. Oh, also Jill told us that with eye gaze devices, a lot of times users' eyes get pretty fatigued. So that was a concern for us too.
Well, and I just have to pop in for 1 sec because we're talking about early intervention. I think it was very apparent that while Maddie and Evan, when they first got started on their AAC journeys, were not able to use their hands, they were going to be able to use their hands. So it would make no sense to have them start using AAC technology using eye gaze when they didn't have to use eye gaze.
Okay, we are at the end of our hour. We can stay on and answer a few more questions, but I did want to do a little bit of the housekeeping piece of this. If you would like to leave, that's totally fine. We have a few more questions that I think it would be great if you are willing to answer those. But I'd really like to thank the presenters. I love the stories. I think the authentic experience of the parents being able to tell your journey and the struggles and the strategies and things that you have applied and done are so beneficial to so many, because it's not a one size fits all. And that was really the goal here, is to hear your stories and hear how you've achieved the successes you have and share those stories with so many. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. When you do leave this session, the feedback survey will launch on its own, and we really appreciate the feedback from you to learn more about your needs for classes and how this one went for you. As a reminder, please submit your completed ASHA forms within 15 days and include today's date and the name of the class in the subject line. You can just abbreviate that. And then you're going to email that to info@prcsaltillo.com. So if, and there have been some questions about whether this is recorded. This is recorded and it will be on our YouTube channels. It'll take us a few days to get there because we have to do a little bit of work to it to make it be presentable to the YouTube channel. So we will get that up for you. But so if you would like to leave, that's okay. I'd just like to ask a couple of these other questions. So there, are you guys okay with answering that?
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. One of the questions is, it's sort of, you know, how did you become so motivated? Because there are some folks that are asking, how do you motivate parents? So it's kind of both sides, you know, how do we motivate the staff that we're working with, and how did you become so motivated to be so in charge?
I know for myself, I have a motto that I can't complain about something unless I'm doing something about it. So I kind of live and die by that motto. But to me, there wasn't room for failure. I mean, this is, I wanted my child to be able to have some type of, you know, some access to their world and be able to have as, you know, enriching life as possible. And if he's not able to, you know, share his needs and wants, or let's say I keep playing the same country song and he's like, oh my gosh, Mom, I'm gonna like freak out if we play that one more time. Like, I want him to tell me that. And so I think it's just, that was really important for me. And, you know, this fear that he would have this life where everyone else was speaking for him. And so anytime that I got discouraged, I just kept trying to think of how frustrating does this have to be for him? And so don't give up yet, because giving up is giving up on him.
So like Tara said, there's not really any other option. She needs to be able to communicate. She needs to be safe, to be a whole person, to feel fulfilled herself. But I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer, so I have a bad attitude quite a bit, and I rely on Jill to be the ever optimist who picks me up pretty much weekly, reminds me of all the progress that she's made. And also Maddie keeps me on track, because even after a few days of just frustration, not talking to us, not being willing to engage with the talker, all of a sudden she'll then come back the next day and be nonstop talking, and it will be absolutely incredible. So every once in a while, Maddie fills my cup. Jill is very dependable about filling up my cup. And, you know, whenever I'm feeling like I'm having a hard time, my partner is there, Dom, to keep us going. So sometimes we take turns, and at least one of us is going at all times, I think.
I think also too, like, you know, where I say that take 5 minutes here and there, if you try to take this on as like the whole chunk at once, it comes across as really overwhelming. And that was extremely helpful for me, where it made me think, okay, I'm providing therapy, I'm doing this, that's 5 minutes here, it's 5 minutes there, and it adds up. But it was my way of doing it in a manageable way where I didn't get overwhelmed, that I felt like I had to be a therapist 24/7.
I also am motivated by the programming of the device. I know that this makes me a weirdo, but I love being able to add new vocabulary and then show Maddie the page. And I didn't get to include the video, but we made a fictional characters page where it had unicorns and fairies and princesses. And the first day that they got to see that page, it was just fairies, unicorns, leprechaun, like so excited. And just seeing her light up like that, given more opportunities to communicate, is huge, and that's a lot of fun.
So, you know, I'm going to kind of lump some of these questions and stories based on what I know from doing practice sessions with you and having conversations. There's so much of a team approach that I hear from all of you. So you're either advocating or you're learning from your therapist that you've been working with, and you're sharing information with all of you, and nobody's giving up. And one of you said, you know, when one's kind of a little bit low, somebody else is picking them up, and you're relying on each other. And I think that from some of these questions that are in here, I think that's the key to it, is that everyone needs to develop their team. The team is really important, and it's getting everybody on board. You may not all be going at the same rate at the same time, but I can see that you each gave what you could when it was needed to the teams that you were working with, whether it was visual support, so you used some low tech that was, or light tech that was available to help the team ease into it a little bit. So there's been some questions like that, so I'm kind of summarizing, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's what your team has been. You know, Jill's been a part of that. They wanted to know how you knew when they were ready. Well, that's part of the evaluation process that happened, is that you were in communication. So it was kind of from what I've understood, is that you were all on the same page. You were doing different things, and then it got to a point. It wasn't, I'm just going to get the iPad, because I do remember you saying that at the beginning, as I thought I'd just get an iPad and I'd be on my way, but that wasn't how it happened.
Well, I'm wondering, when I was making this, I was thinking back to that time, and I'm wondering if I maybe bullied Jill into filling out those insurance forms a little bit, because we were really eager to get a device. And maybe we jumped the gun, and she probably could have used some more time getting familiar with symbols, but I have no regrets about that. She didn't fight me too hard anyway.
So we're now at like 7:40, so we're 10 minutes past, and I think we could talk all night about all of this. And I truly want to say, just from a speech therapist point of view, is following the lead and getting that team approach to everything, not being afraid of failing. I think that was something else, is you're going to have ups and downs. I fail at many things all around. You know, I have 5 children. I don't always get it right. I have other people in my life. I don't always get it right. So why we would expect ourselves to get everything right when we're doing anything. And when it comes to AAC, you're learning a new language. If I were learning another language, I would never get it all right from the beginning, even as a therapist, even as the person using the device. So I hope that everyone can understand that they've presented these great children that they've been working so hard to help them achieve this success, and they measure their successes in different ways. So determining how their team is ready is really what's important here. How you get your team together. Do you agree on that?
I do, and I think also too with that team approach is that, you know, it's having therapists check in on the families where if they don't have a strong, you know, network, to if they are able to help them connect with resources. I think that will help families, you know, persevere and go forward in their journey as well.
So, and there is a question, how can I get more info if I'm a parent? And I think, you know, finding an SLP or finding the consultants that are in your area. So if you wanted to talk to a PRC Saltillo consultant, you can go to the website and find your consultant. Working with your speech pathologist in your area, it is really highly recommended, whether you select to go an app route or a device route. I think having a speech pathologist that can help support you and help guide your journey is really important.
Tara and I both made our email addresses available to anyone who'd like to reach out. You can find me on Facebook just by using my name. I know Tara's on Facebook as well. So please feel free to reach out to us. And I mean, again, I love talking about my kids, so I'm always willing to do more of that. So really.
I think also too, like if you've thought it, like we most likely have too, you know, like if you're struggling, we've struggled. And so there isn't a question or like, oh, I just don't know to ask this, like just ask it, because we'd love to help. And, you know, Jill Tolman is an amazing AAC resource. You know, she's huge in Colorado and does see other individuals all over, really, on telehealth. So that could potentially be another resource for all of you as well.
Okay. So I'm feeling compelled to answer. Somebody said that their device just shipped and their SLP resigned. Contact your consultant. Contact the consultant of the device that's being shipped to you. They should be able to help you. We have amazing consultants that are super resourceful and will help guide you. They can't be your therapist, but they could surely help you, get started and provide training. So.
And very available. I'm always surprised at how fast I hear back from Saltillo representatives.
It's a passionate group. It's a very passionate group. Finding voices is amazing. Okay, I am going to go ahead and end this webinar. Thank you so much for sharing the stories. Thank you, Jill, for organizing with these wonderful parents that we truly appreciate. So, and if you have questions that we didn't get to, because there were quite a few questions, I think they're okay with you reaching out to those, but I wouldn't also want to bombard them with too much. So. All right, thank you so much. I hope you all have a great evening, and I look forward to reading the survey results. Thank you.
Yeah, so fun.